secondary school, or maybe like communicative English or test prep. Okay. So we have a lot of teachers from secondary school and high school. Okay. A lot of teachers who teaching general English, even ESP. Interesting. Yeah, academic English and university level. Okay. And if you teach all of the kinds of English, you can just type like A, B, C, D, O, E. Okay. And if you teach other kinds of English, like maybe English for hospitality, for example, you can type your own answer. Okay. So let's move on to our last question before the workshop finally started. So what challenges do you frequently have when teaching reading? So for this one, I think that we need a little more more writing, okay? So I want you to use your phone, okay? Use your phone and scan the QR code on the screen. Okay.
And make
Scan the
sure
QR code on the screen.
if you
Yeah.
have the link, you can also send the link via the chat box. So
Oh,
each
okay,
student
okay.
will not have
Wait a
the
second. Well, I
spotlight.
also
Yeah.
have the link here. Yes. Okay, I also have the link here. Okay, I can see that if you cannot share on Padlet, I can see that some of you have already texted and typed in the chat box. Okay, that's okay too. But I'm waiting to have as many as questions as possible here on Padlet because actually we are going to review this at the end of the workshop when we have time for Q&A, right? So it's best that it is recorded. Okay, so I think the more common now I can see is that there are a lot of vocabulary, right? There are a lot of vocabulary in the reading text. Okay? Or maybe ways to make lessons more intriguing, more interesting for students. Okay, hard and academic words again. I'm going to wait until like I receive at least 20 questions, I think, because I have more than 100 teachers here. Okay, yes. So reading usually very dry. So we have to find a way for us to be communicative and interactive while still meeting the outcome of the lesson. Yes. Okay. Students are not focused enough to read long text. So they lose concentration along the way. Okay. Oh, some students, some teachers here like have a very detailed question. Okay, so reading techniques. Okay. Okay, so even though I have followed the pre, while, and post procedure, why do I still feel my lessons is incomplete and haven't met the outcome? This is a very interesting question. Okay. Okay, maybe one more minute until everybody have typed in the Padlet. Okay, so sometimes in the reading lesson, we have a lot of translation. So is translation good or not? I think this one will be mentioned in our workshop as well. Okay, student lack of background information. Okay, so maybe the topic is a bit academic, right? They are reading about something that they would never read their own mother tongue language. So this is also something that we have to address. Okay, motivated activities as well. Okay, so, and here we have some problems with the attitude. Lazy to read, don't have useful ways of learning by themselves, don't have the habit of reading. Okay. Okay, low reading motivation, mixed ability. Okay, so this is also another keyword in our workshop today. Okay, so mixed ability classes, diverse reading levels, right? How are we going to address? And also struggle with pronunciation. Okay, so maybe this is for students of a small age as well. young age when we want them to read aloud. They have to have some kind of good pronunciation. Okay, so more than 20 questions here already, and you're welcome to keep typing your answer, okay? If you haven't got enough time to do so. Okay, so let's move on to the outline of our workshop today. Okay, so we are going to have five main parts for the workshop today. So first, we are going to go through the basic stages of a reading lesson. So the pre-read activities, the while reading activities, and the post-reading activities. And then we have a kind of bonus and I think that most teachers will find it useful. That is how to develop your own reading materials, your own task. And last one, we are going to have a Q&A, real life problems, and we are going to review all of the questions here in the Padlet. Okay, so first, with the first two reading activities, the pre and the while, I would like to welcome Ms. Phương. So, Ms. Phương.
Thank you so much. I'm really surprised at how engaging and just like very active all of the teachers in our workshop. So I'm surprised to read so many questions from the Padlet, and also so many teachers seem to have the same kind of concern. And I really hope that our workshop today will help you to get some suggestion to improve the quality of the lessons. So first, let's get started with the pre-reading activities. Before we start, this is another question for the chat box. So I have several options here for the purposes for pre-reading activities. What do you think are the purposes for these activities? You can type in A, B, C, you can type in more than one letters here of the purpose or purposes for the pre-reading activity. Okay, I see A and B, B, C, and F. So we have B as a common factor, B interest and motivation. Okay, many people choose A as well, so active prior knowledge. And F, build and train predicting skill. What about questioning skills? Okay, I see 1, 2 people choose questioning skill. Okay. So this is a bit of a trick question, because actually for me, the purposes for pre-reading activities would be all of the answers on the screen. And my answer may differ from mine, but I think we all agree that whatever the purpose is, it is very important to have pre-reading activities. So it can range anywhere from 2 to maybe 10 minutes, maybe sometime even longer. But please have some pre-reading activities to prepare the student for the text. So for the pre-reading activities, I think there are two main kinds. And today I'm going to talk about these two. There can be many more, but due to the limitation of this workshop, I will only mention these two, probably most popular kinds of pre-reading activity. The first one, the teacher can give question to the class, maybe 2 to 4 questions, and then call for answers from individual students or the whole class. So you don't need a lot of time for this. And usually the complexity of this activity is quite low because you can have very easy questions, but you can also increase the level of complexity by increasing the difficulty of the question. But overall, this is a fairly simple activity that can be used for individuals or the whole class. So because of how simple it is, I recommend this for bigger classes with less time. So maybe classes for public school teachers, maybe classes with 40, 50 students. So you can have something to do during a short time, but still effective. For the question, the first strategy is to make sure you use some prompts to spice up the section. There can be many types of prompts because in one semester we can have many lessons, so you can vary the prompts so the lesson won't be boring. So you can use text like a personal story, some sharing from the teacher. You can use a quote, a situation, or some pictures. You can even use some short comic or maybe some meme that is very fun and popular on the internet. Or if you really know your student, you can pick a song that they really like or an extract from a podcast or some kind of story. Or combine pictures and audios in videos. So you can have authentic materials like an art or a cartoon or a piece of news, etc. So we have a variety of choices for the prompts. However, for the prompt to be effective, make sure that both the prompts and the question are relevant to the student's interest and also thought-provoking. For example, I have this extremely dry and difficult and lengthy legal text about prenuptial agreements or prenups. Now I have to design some question and I need to pick some prompts for this kind of text. It won't be very difficult because this is legal text already. Student may get sleepy just hearing about the title of the text. So what kind of prompts and question can you use to introduce the student to this topic? You can type in the chat box. Would you want to use some text or maybe tell a story, some pictures, or maybe let student watch a video? Legal text, prompts and questions. Okay, problem and triggered emotionally from Julia. Okay, have your friends divorced? Wow. This will be maybe a great question for an adult class, really. What was the impact? Okay, a video relating to the topic. All right. So the question, if you've known anyone who have divorced already, it may be very practical to an adult class. But what about classes of younger students, maybe college students who are studying laws? Okay, set a scenario. All right, so setting a scenario is also a great way to start the class. But this would be my choice of prompts. Okay. Raise your hand if you know either or both of these couples. And what happened to them? So maybe now you can see like my idea behind these picture, why I would choose these for the topics, right? So the text is about prenuptial agreements, and my prompt would be either one of these two pictures or maybe both of a famous couple who divorced already, and their divorce was like really messy with a lot of time in court. And then all of the newspaper were covering the stories in every angles. So my question for the student would be, who are they? What happened to their marriage? And how can we avoid such problems? So after students talk about the problems that they heard from the newspapers about their marriage and divorce, we can talk about the way to avoid these problems with the prenuptial agreements. And then I would lead into the text by saying that, well, while the text can be difficult and lengthy, but it won't be really useful for you or maybe someone you know now or in the future. So this is something very necessary and practical. So maybe it can be difficult, but try to read these carefully because this is about your benefit and maybe some people, the beloved people of yours benefit as well. Okay, so when you select the prompts, the more you know about your student, the better you can choose the prompts. So for example, for us, we are own teachers, so I picked these couple because one is like the famous Vietnamese couple and the other one is an internationally famous couple. For younger students, I may choose some other couples, like celebrity who they know more, like some Vietnamese singers, for examples. So be sure you get to know your students so you know what they like, what they are interested in, so you can pick and choose the right one for them. All right, and that's for the questions. And now let's talk about the games. So we have kinds of games for pre-reading activities, and usually they are very long. The complexity can be really high. You need time to explain the instruction. You need time to do some demonstration. You can have game for individual students or pairs or groups or even the whole class. So I recommend this kind of activity for smaller classes with more time. So maybe classes in an English center with 15 or 10 or fewer students. For bigger classes, you can also use games too, but maybe for the lesson when you have a lot of time to spare, because this can drag on for quite a bit. Right, so for the games, the first strategy is to make sure that the game is competitive, very important, competitive. And we can do this by adding the time pressure, make sure that there is engagement from the whole class, and make sure that you have a system of winners and losers with corresponding rewards and conditions. Okay, let's look at the first point, how to add the time pressure. So I have a question here on the screen. I have a question. Very simple question, right? And maybe you know this one, maybe you don't, but probably you don't have a lot of feelings when you see this question. Now let's try with a timer. Okay. Make sure you have the audio on for this timer. Let me start the timer for the question and notice how you feel while you are looking and hearing the timer. Do you feel like you had some kind of like rushing feeling, some kind of excitement, some maybe even anxious going on while you're listening to the timer? And especially at the end of the timer, I had that boom, the explosion sound, and also the tick, 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 tick. It's really pushing and rushing you to answer the question, right? So utilize the timers with sound effects. You can use the pre-made timer from PowerPoint slides. So this one I modified from a PowerPoint slide timers that I downloaded from the internet. Or for longer timer, you can also go on YouTube and look up timers with some background music to add more of the excitement to the lesson. So this is the first thing. Make sure you always set the time and have some form of time pressure for the student. The next thing about class engagement. Okay, so make sure that everyone in the class is engaged in the lesson. No one is left behind. So for example, I want to design a game to introduce and pre-teach vocabulary before a reading class. Okay, we have many kinds of vocabulary games, right? But this is what I see many teachers would do. And I agree 3 scenarios here, each 2 variations. So I give the first one. So I had an individual activity here. And usually I see this so many times. The teacher will prepare some slideshows with questions and picture cues. And then in class, the teacher will show the slide and then call for a random student to answer, or maybe call for a volunteer to answer the question. And then the teacher would approve or correct the answer. And that's it. And then move on with the next slide and question. So this is a more teacher-centered approach with no time pressure and very little classroom engagement. Maybe the student who answered the question, younger student would be interested in the lesson, but other students, like they just sit there and listen passively. So how can we improve this activity? Okay, to improve this activity, so for me, it would require some initial investment, but we will talk about this later. But I would prepare these small kind of board for students with marker that can be erased, so it can be reused. Or if you don't have this, you can prepare some pieces of A4 paper with markers as well. Each student will have a board and a marker, or some pieces of paper and a marker. And for each slide, the student will have like maybe 15 seconds to write the answer. So this is a time pressure from the previous point. And when the time is up, the student will have to raise the board with their answers. And now everyone will have to join the activity, and teacher can very quickly see who are the faster, stronger student and who are the weaker student who have the incorrect answer or no answer. And then instead of the teacher correcting the answers the teacher should call for some student who have given the right answer to explain or to correct the other students. And this will be more of a student-centered teaching approach with a lot of engagement for both stronger and weaker students. Okay, so this is the first activity, individual activity. Now let's go to a pair work activity. And this time I have some crosswords. Okay, crosswords is also a fun game that you can use for vocabulary. And the normal way. So the teacher won't divide the class into pairs, and then each pair receives a handout with the crossword and some cues. And then students will work in pairs to finish the crossword. And then the teacher will check the answers. Okay, very standard, right? And it is still activity. Some students may find it fun to work on the crosswords. But now let's add some element of the competitiveness. And we will do that by making the student compete in their own pairs. So instead of each pair getting one piece of handout, now each student will get their own piece of handout with the crossword. And then students will compete in pairs to finish the crossword. And now you don't have the timer, but you have that time pressure because they had to compete against each other. And then when one student finishes, the pair will stop doing the crossword individually, and then they will need to discuss the answers. So maybe the student who finishes the crosswords may not be the one with more correct answers. Right? So let students have some time to talk with their peers and to correct themselves. The teacher doesn't need to do that. So after all the discussion or most of the discussion, teacher can call on the pairs to explain the words to the class. So for the teacher won't be the monitor, not like the person to explain and to repeat on these things, because like we hope that with the whole class, there may be student knowing these words already. Sometimes if there is like maybe 1, 2 very difficult items, then the teacher can interrupt and support with that. But our goal is for the student to work and to help themselves as much as they can. And lastly, I have a group work activity. Okay, and for the group work activity, this is more like an exercise from the textbook, a matching exercise. So you match the term on one with the definition on the other side. And each group will receive a list of terms and a list of definitions. So they will discuss groups to match the terms with the right definitions, and then the teacher checks the answers. But this is also some group work, so there's something for the student to talk about already. But usually what I see is that there will be maybe 1, 2 students who carry on the team. So they will do everything, and then other students just sit there and do nothing during the group. So to fix that, let's make sure everyone in the group had something to do. So instead of just a simple matching exercise, I want to turn this into a discussion and some form of competition. So each group will receive only a terms, and the number of terms won't equal the number of members. So this is very important. And then the student can have 5 or 10 minutes. Remember, we need the time pressure, right? And during that time, the members work together to define the terms, and each member will take turn to write the words and the definition on the board. But each student can only write one word and one definition. So this is why like they won't have to pay attention to the discussion. So maybe there's a weak student who doesn't know the definition of a term, but they will still need to listen for the discussion so they can go to the board and they can write and finish their part. So we'll make sure that for the whole class, there's engagement, everyone will participate in the activity. Okay, and when the time is over, teacher can ask the group to cross-check the answers. So again, we don't want to check the answers themselves, but we want to let the other students teach the class as well. Okay, teaching is the best way for students to learn things, right? So this will be a more student-centered teaching approach with lots of engagement. And this is about the first strategy for games. So remember, make it competitive. The last thing about competitiveness is that once you have the points and the winners and losers, you will need to have the rewards or punishments correspondingly. In my experience, we want to use more of the rewards. So we want to encourage the positive feelings with the class, and we want to use less of the punishments because we don't want the student to be scared of or to fear the class. But every once in a while, we should have some punishment too. Be careful when you use punishment and make sure you really understand your students. For example, in here, the second punishment is you will make the student wear a silly prop for the rest of the lesson. Maybe like a really funny heart of shame, for example. But you need to make sure that if you use this kind of punishment, you really know class well and everyone is comfortable with that. So it won't have any negative psychological effect on the students. For the rewards, we have so many kinds of rewards. And if you pay attention to the Vietnamese market nowadays, you will see that there's this thing on the blind boxes, which is very trending and viral. And it seems like everyone loves them, even the adults and the children. So you can also use that for your classes. So maybe from 2, 3 lessons in one semester, you can, instead of just giving the student the rewards, you put them separately into small boxes or in a black plastic bags. And then you let them pick and choose. And when they open the box or the bag, they will have this element of surprise, and then they will be more engaged. They will pay more attention to the class. Okay, you don't need to do this with every one of the lesson you have, but maybe for the bigger reviews or like for the longer lesson, you know that maybe for this lesson there's a long text, so now you have something fun for them to begin with. All right. So this is about the last point. Make sure you have rewards and punishment. Use more of the rewards. Now, the second strategy is to use props to add more actions and excitement. So for the props, I've been using a lot of props throughout my whole teaching career, and sometimes they can be expensive, like they can be a really expensive investment upfront. But the good thing is they are reusable, so you only need to buy this one, and then you can use them again and again and again in different classes. And the value I get from these small investment is like way over the money that I paid for them. So for example, this thing very useful. The board, so student can run these, student can draw on these. They are you can erase them, so they are reusable. Or you can have different toys to be used as a random selector, like this dentist crocodile. Okay, you push on the teeth, then the unlucky student will get snapped, and then that student will need to answer some question, for example. Or this one, my student love this, the magnetic dot game. So you can use this so after a student answers some question, they can get the chance to throw the dart, and then they can get point from that. Or maybe they throw the dart to select the question. Or for the games, many teachers I know have the board games, and for that, you should buy some dice. These are really cheap, maybe just 1,000 Vietnam dong per dice, and then you can reuse them. And the feeling of rolling a dice is really exciting for the student, especially in the more competitive games. And also this one. So instead of the traditional raising your hand to answer, you can have some bell, and the student can maybe try to rush and ring the bell to get the right to answers. Or maybe they can have these funny squeaky toys, and they can squeeze the toy to get the right to answers. And these can also be used as a rewards. For example, my student, for some reason, they really love the duck and the chicken. So usually in that lesson, I would say that whichever team with the highest point is a winner, and they can keep the ducks or chickens for themselves. And they really love it. They will be very competitive and attentive during the lesson. Another prop that I like is a deck of cards. Very cheap, but extremely useful, and we can use it to group student. So for the deck of cards, you can group student with the numbers. So you have group of 4 if you group student by the numbers. You can group student by the number, the colors to divide student in pairs, or you can group student by the suit. Here, for example, if you want to have group of 7, then you may have 4 group of 7 with the deck of cards. Okay, so the reason why I like this deck of cards to group student is because you can have random selection by giving the deck of cards to a student to suffer and deal the cards to the class. So the student won't feel like they are involved in the process of group division, but also there's some element of randomness in there. Or sometimes you can even manipulate the selection. For example, I have this group of students who are very talkative and I want to break them, but I don't want to just break them. So I can just manipulate the cards, put the cards in the right order, and then give the card to the student. So they won't have to break out in the other groups. But like, I don't really need to tell them off because that may ruin the class atmosphere, or maybe they won't have resentment feeling for me. So this is, I think, a very useful way to group students with just a deck of cards. Right. So most of the things I've been talking about are for the online classes. For online classes, or maybe even for offline classes, for adult students with the phone, we can use these online resources. We have many websites for interactive games like Kahoot or Quizlet or Padlet that we use already. We have the random selectors like Wheel Names or onlinestopwatch.com. The name is online stopwatch, but you have random selector. You also have the dices with that website. Or sometimes you can save the time by just using Google's built-in function, like type in into the search bar to roll a dice or stopwatch or timer, and use these tools really conveniently. Okay, so that's everything about pre-reading activities. So again, please don't skip the pre-reading activities. You can stir up the class with different questions and games, and there are so many choices that you will need to repeat one for the whole semester. Make sure that your activity will be relevant to the students' needs and interests, engaging and time-bound. Make sure you set aside enough time for the activity because this is only the pre-reading stage. One extra tip before we move on with the why reading activities. So personally, my most favorite pre-reading activity ever is vocabulary games. They are very fun and engaging. I like to start the class with a game so everyone will be happy and ready for the reading. And also, it is time saving because I don't need to have separate lead-in section. And then after the reading, I don't need to have another vocabulary activity. So because we only have limited time in class, whichever section I can combine, I will combine it. So usually I combine the lead-in with the vocabulary activity. And finally, from my experience, the biggest barrier to reading comprehension for most Vietnamese students is a lack of vocabulary. So by making sure that they have at least the keywords in the pre-reading activity, I will help them with reading comprehension, and that way the student will find it a bit easier to do the actual reading activity. Okay, and that wraps up the pre-reading activity section. Now let's move on to the real challenge. The biggest challenge while reading activities.
So before
This
we start,
section,
sorry, Miss Phương, I think
sorry.
that teachers, you can have some notes and you need to take note because Miss Phương shared a lot of interesting and useful activity for everyone. So I hope that you prepare yourself and stay focused. And to start the while reading session, I really love Miss Phương sharing some games and activities, and this is the most important one for while reading. Thank you, Miss Phương. Please share.
Okay, so actually, one thing before we move on is that
Yeah.
because Miss Vương and I would like the teachers to enjoy the session without worrying of taking pictures or taking a screen cap or like taking notes. So make sure So don't, okay? Stay there and enjoy because at the end of this, yes, we are going to send the slides. Yeah, so I can see that Miss Chang is asking in the chat box. We're going to send the slides after this workshop, okay? So just make sure that you stay until the end, okay? And finish the review. So finish the review and the feedback of the workshop, and that should not be a problem, okay? Okay, so Miss Fu.
Thank you so much. I love using game for a while, especially after my graduation from college. I spent a lot of time working on games and activities. Because I think like me as a student, I also like to have lessons that are more exciting and engaging. But so now, back to probably the biggest challenge ever while reading activities. For this section, before we begin, I have this very fundamental question for teachers, okay, for teachers. So when we teach reading, you will have a text like the thing on the left here, and then you will have some tasks or exercises accompanying the text. So in your opinion, should students read the text first or the task first? Text or task? What do you think? Okay. Task first. I see a lot of tasks first. It depends. Text first. Okay. Always be very careful with the choice question, right? So text or the task. Let's look at the pros and cons of each approach. If you read the text first, to me, this is a very task-focused kind of reading. So in the normal daily life, we don't have a task accompanying the text, right? So reading the task first is only usable for different reading tests. So now you have some question and the student can read the task and they can identify the keyword and scan for the keyword in the text. And then they can answer the question. But I think this approach is only suitable for a weaker student because they cannot read the whole text themselves and they wouldn't understand the whole text. So the more points they can get from scanning for the keyword, the better. But actually, this way, if you think about it, when you read the question first, you don't really know what the text is about, and you don't really know like the structure of the text and what kind of knowledge or message the author is trying to get through to you through the text. So in my opinion, and remember, we are teaching reading. Reading as a skill, we are not just teaching reading for tests. We are not teaching on the tip for taking tests. We want to teach reading and we want to build the reading habit. So for me, it would be a lot more beneficial to read the text first. And this is the more content focused to facilitate reading as a skill and a habit. So if the student can understand the text very well, they can also answer the question well because you understand the text. So for the question, it's very unlikely that you will give the wrong answer if you already understand the text. And also, when we are reading, it's not only about English reading as a but it's also about the text as a vehicle to deliver the knowledge. And this is something that I see like maybe some teachers do not care enough about. I myself learned a lot from all the reading texts that I had to read and I had to teach at one point in my life. And usually they are really interesting. They give a lot of information. They can be very thought-provoking. So if students really read and understand deeply the text, not just read to get the answer for the question. If the student read and understand deeply the text, they can gain more on their knowledge on various topics and they can improve overall as a person. So that is my ultimate goal. I don't want the student to just be able to finish a text. I want student to really read the text, understand the text, and then maybe have some improvement in both the reading skill and also in their background knowledge. Okay, and from this background knowledge, they can use them in other tasks like with writing skill or with the speaking skill. So that is something, a problem I have with the writing skill that students do not have enough background knowledge and vocabulary. And they can only make up for that with listening and reading. So they really need to truly read, listen, not just scanning for the right answers. Okay, so in my opinion, my approach may be a bit different, but I would like the student to read the text first and understand the text. If the text is too difficult, maybe you want to wait until Miss Nhung's section to make sure that a suitable text for the student. But with that in mind, remember, we need to build reading as a skill and as a habit, right? So let's see how we can facilitate reading. I have a few strategies to facilitate reading, a few key points. What do you think is the most important aspect to facilitate reading? Most important factor to facilitate reading. Okay, I think the most important factor to help you improve your reading skill or to help the student improve their reading skill would be vocabulary. Okay, vocabulary, grammar, okay, grammar as well. So the first thing to note, I think many people would agree with me, is vocabulary. The second factor also very important in reading. Also vocabulary. And also the third factor to facilitate reading is also vocabulary. So this is a running joke on the internet these days. What is important? You need to repeat it 3 times, right? Vocabulary, vocabulary, vocabulary. So maybe if the student doesn't understand the grammar, but they have vocabulary, they can still understand a part of the reading. Without vocabulary, it won't be a real struggle for the students. So this is super important. And then at the beginning of the lesson, I read some of the concerns of you guys as like reading can be boring for students. So let's look at different way to make reading interactive. And also, I see here, someone mentioned the structure. Okay, the structure in the text, or maybe it won't belong to this last part, reading beyond the lines, to make sure the student really understand deeply the text. But let's look at the first 3 factors here, vocabulary. And what are the notes for vocabulary in reading? So this is not a workshop on vocabulary teaching, so I will only give certain guidelines on vocabulary in reading lessons. So to make sure that students have enough vocabulary for one reading, especially for longer reading, we can assign the vocabulary study in previous lessons homework. So not only the like today's lesson 5, maybe in lesson 1 I assign some homework for vocabulary, but maybe I need to plan that from lesson 3, maybe from lesson 2. If you have the whole syllabus, the whole curriculum for the semester, then you can just set aside some vocabulary for students to learn in the homework of each lesson. So the more frequent the students study vocabulary, better they will retain these words. And then before each reading lesson, we can review the key terms that we let them study at home, or maybe for some keyword they didn't study at home, we can pre-teach the vocabulary. We don't need to teach the student every word in one text, but make sure for the keyword, we only leave out maybe less than 5 words for strategic guessing. So this skill of guessing words from context, but like don't let students guess too many words. Just less than 5 words should be fine. And then sometimes, for example, if you teach IELTS reading, we have a text of maybe 800 words, and that will be very difficult for students to study everything. So we can leave out the unnecessary words in the longer text, but make sure the student will understand probably at least 70 or 80% of the text. Okay, so this is for vocabulary. Hopefully you have participated in some vocabulary workshop to help with this section. But now more with reading. And I have this favorite quotation. I'm sure many of you already knows this one. So if you want to go fast, you go alone, and if you want to go far, go together, like we are going together through this workshop, right? But my question is, what if you want to go fast and far at the same time, right? It seems like if you go together, you might have to go slow. So from this quotation, the answer is already in the quotation itself. So if you want to go fast and far together, you need time to go by yourself, and you need time to go together with other people. So for the students, it will mean that they need to study by themselves and they need to study together. Okay, remember 2 phases. The first phase, the student need to study by themselves, and then they need to study together. And how can we apply this to reading? Okay, and that's the next point I want to talk about in how to facilitate reading. We have interactive reading. So in the first phase, the student won't read individually. So you need to have some time, some quiet time for student to read. And it's not only about reading, not only about like looking at the words and try to take in the information, but reading is a very proactive process. While reading, the student should interact with the text by using maybe a highlighter or a pencil to highlight and underline the key points. The student can also write out the notes, question, make a list of new words, etc. Do just let the student read, make them read and write at the same time. Okay, they have to think while they are reading, not just like mindlessly browse the text. And in the second phase, the student will share their notes and discuss. So the student can have the opportunity to speak out their opinions and also ask a question on the text. At the same time, they can listen to other people's opinions and find potential answers for their questions. So if you look at all the highlighted words in my slide, you will see that within reading, you have writing, you have speaking, and you have listening. So if done right, reading is an integrated and very dynamic skill. And when the student had to read and write at the same time, and then they had time to speak and had time to listen, hopefully it won't be just a very kind of quiet, dry lesson when students just read and then pick the right answer for the questions, right? We need to have more activities during the while reading stage to truly make reading an interactive activity. And how do we do that, right? How do we do we can help the student. So before the reading, make sure that students have the pen, highlighter, some page to write on. Okay, make sure that all students are well prepared to read and write. And then we should model what the students should do. So for me, I would read together maybe the first paragraph with the student, and then give example of what I would highlight, write down some new words, write down a question that I have. Or maybe you can give the student a handout of guiding questions for students to think about why they are reading the text. So this is before reading. And then during the discussion, make sure that you keep an open mind and respect students' opinions. So for this part, it can be very difficult if the student disagree with us. For example, you may really like, I like Harry Potter. I really like the Harry Potter series and I want everyone to read it. But maybe my student hate that. But I cannot just like scold them. I cannot just tell them off for that. I need to be open-minded. I need to listen to them and then listen to their reason why they don't like it. Then maybe I can give suggestion, or maybe I can give explanation or help them to do something so they can understand the text better and maybe like it as I do. Okay, so remember to be open-minded and respectful towards other people's opinions. And also, I want to bring the reading and this activity beyond the classrooms. So students not only can share during the class with their peers and teachers, but students can also talk about what they have read with the family members, with maybe some expert in other fields. So if you have an opportunity, for example, you can invite some guest speakers, or maybe the students themselves know somebody who can share an insider's views. Okay, so this is like really engaging and really make the student take a deep look in the matter that they are reading. And this also for me very important as a person, especially for parents, because for parents, all of these activities, how to make interactive reading, this is how we build the reading as a habit for your children. Okay, so not only read to answer some questions for some tests, but read to really get the knowledge and to enjoy the process of reading. Okay, and the last thing, this is for me, after vocabulary, the most important thing to help students understand and remember what they have read. And from that, they can improve their task, the correctness of their answers, is to truly understand the author's purpose. And to do that, we need to constantly ask ourselves and make the students ask themselves question: what is the function of this sentence or this paragraph or this passage? And note that I put sentence first and then paragraph and then passage. So we need to start from the details and then we go to the more general, bigger idea. For example, I have a very short paragraph here with 2 sentences. Each of them has a different function. What do you think is the function for sentence number 1 and the sentence number 2? Okay, so the first sentence, reading is something. So this is a definition, right? And the second sentence, reading will help us learn, communicate, and enjoy stories. So we can say that these are the benefits of reading. Remember, note that. So in the first sentence, there's no appearance of the word define or definition. And in the second sentence, we don't see the word benefit. But this is something you need to read beyond the lines. So the student at the most basic level, they need to understand the vocabulary, to understand the literal meanings of the sentences. But then now we are trying to push them to a deeper level of understanding, more advanced level of understanding. They need to think about the function of the text and they need to get that word that is not written in the text out to talk about the text. And this will take a lot of practice, but this is a skill like riding a motorbike. Once you get it, you can do it automatically. Okay, so for example, we can have a really long text, but if the student know how to read the text and he or she can get the function of each paragraph, we can put together the big picture of the whole text like this. So the first paragraph is used to define reading. The second paragraph discuss the benefits of reading. The third paragraph try to explain how to read effectively, etc. So if the student can put together, this is for me something like a frame or a skeleton of all the words in text. The text can be long, but the message is usually very short and simple. So if they can do it like this, they have been doing active reading because they have to read and also think about the purpose and think about what word to talk about the purpose of the reading. And that can help the student to improve their comprehension. It helps them to memorize the information better. Remember, one of the purpose for reading is to gain more knowledge. So if they understand, they remember better. Also, this whole process is a process to train the cognitive skill because the student have to read and think at the same time. Okay, so it is a very active process. The student cannot just look at the word and then let their mind kind of wander around during the lesson. They have to actively think about the text and the other elements of the text. Okay, so again, in a nutshell, vocabulary, very, very important. Without vocabulary, without these foundational bricks, we cannot build reading, we cannot build the text. And make sure to make reading interactive with the other skills as well. So make the student write while they read and then let the student talk and listen about the text. And finally, try to make the student read beyond the lines. So not only understand literal meaning of the text, but try to understand the deeper purpose of the text. And this will be a very useful skills for especially in this day and age when the media have all kinds of fake news and false information. To have critical reading, to read beyond the lines will be extremely useful skill. Okay. Okay, one final thing before I pass this on to my colleague. I have same with the pre-reading for while reading, I also have an extra tip for you, which is to not translate and try to force yourself and the student to think and speak in English, right? So thinking and speaking in English will help you to be more fluent and advanced in English. Or not. Not, at least not for everyone. So be very careful with this. So in my experience, for weaker student with some Vietnamese knowledge, so maybe teenager student or adult student with a really broad background knowledge, translating will help them build a clear understanding of the text, clear and accurate. Okay. And we have this famous saying in philosophy that I'm sure everyone knows. Quantitative changes lead to qualitative changes. Đủ thay đổi về lượng thì chất mới thay đổi, đúng không? So once the student have accumulated enough of the language, they will naturally start think and speak in English. But before that, if you force them to think in English, they don't have the vocabulary to think in English. So they will have a lot of difficulty with that. So don't be afraid to use more Vietnamese with weaker students who are a bit older. Okay, for small children who are building their own knowledge, they can learn bilingually very easily because everything is new. But for the student who have already some knowledge about the world, you can take advantage of that knowledge in Vietnamese to help them with English. Okay, so don't be afraid to use more Vietnamese if you have weaker students. That's my final message. And now we will move to the last section in the lesson flow, which is the post-reading activities by Miss Nhung.
Okay, thank you, Miss Phương. Yes, Miss Bình.
Yeah, thank you, Miss Phương and Miss Yung. Before we start your sharing session, can you please everyone turn on the camera? We have 182 teachers here, so I hope that we will have a picture that we can capture that moment, and we can have a lot of teachers who are online now and are ready to turn on the camera. All right, thank you. And I promise I will take it quick. And then we will go to Miss Nhung because this online sharing session we will have a lot of information that we are a little bit nervous that we have run out of time. All right. So everyone, please, we have one more minute to turn on the camera and we will take the picture very quickly and then we'll go to Miss Nhung part. All right. So you can choose some. All right, thank you, everyone. So I will take some picture first. 1, 2, 3, go. One more, because we have two screen. All right, 1, 2, 3, go. All right. So thank you, everyone. So Miss Nhung, keep continue. Thank you for that.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Okay, so a little background story is that me and Miss Phương is actually we are classmates from the VietTESOL program, and we're also like ex-colleagues from the old company. And Miss Phương has never failed to impress me, like with her knowledge and with her teaching experience. So thank you, Miss Phương, a lot. So it has been like 1 hour into our workshop. So I want to ask like how many of you are still here and how many of you here are still with us, okay? So I want you to type in the chat box, okay? Type in the chat box. 1, you feel good. So far, so good, okay? 1, so far, so good. It is okay. Okay. You haven't even like known what is option number 2. Okay. So option number 2 is that a bit overwhelmed. A bit overwhelmed. This may be too much. This is a bit overwhelmed. Okay. I can see a little bit of number two, but mostly one. Okay. So we have like a very positive crowd here. Okay, one and two. Okay. So I just want to, okay, I just want to assure you is that even if you feel overwhelmed, it is okay. Okay. It is okay because I think that this takes our whole career to learn. And this is not something that we can absorb in 90 minutes. So when you go home and when you read the slides again, try to apply this in your teaching every day. Okay, this is truly beyond my expectation for a pre-workshop. Okay, so maybe we can ask VietTESOL and British Council to continue their teaching English series, right? Okay, I need more time for noting things down. Don't worry, Lingdan, because you will have the slides. Okay, you will have the slides. You will have the slides, so no worry. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to continue with my part, and that is post reading. Okay, so give me an emoticons if you can see my slide. Okay, give me a heart, give me a thumbs up if you can see my slide. Okay, I'm waiting for your response. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so the slide is doing okay. Okay, so for the post reading activity. So the first question, start with why, right? So why post reading? Type A, B, C in the chat box. What are the main purposes behind post reading activities? Okay, this is not the trick questions, okay? I don't like to do trick questions like Miss Phương, so don't worry. Okay. Okay, don't worry because we are going to have the record too. It is going to be on YouTube, okay? Okay. So I'm waiting. I told you, it's not a trick question. There is still one student who say that it's all. It's not all, I have to say. Okay, only three. Okay, a hint, only three. Only three main purposes. It's not all. Okay. Okay, so after my hints, a lot of you get it right. Okay. So the answer is ADNF. Okay, ADNF. First, it is to improve students' output. So we are learning reading, right? But in a reading lesson, it is served as an input skill. So you read something, you have knowledge about something. So now it is time for you to apply that knowledge in your output. How are you going to speak? How are you going to write using what you have learned? Okay, so improve students' output. This is also a keyword in the way that we can make lessons more interesting. That is to integrate many skills, okay? Integrate many of the skills together. B, make sure students fully understand every detail of the text. Okay, that is, I have to say that is an unrealistic expectation. Okay, so this is not our expectation of a reading lesson. It's not fully understand every detail of the text. So B is not the correct answer. Okay, check students' reading speed is okay. You can take time. Reading speed is not a problem here. Okay, so beside improve students' output, to activate high order thinking and to engage student interactively, our goals, okay? So engage them interactively because it is going to the end of the lesson, right? So students may have spent all of their energy for the games in the pre-reading activities and then all of the difficult tasks in the while reading. So now it's time for them to feel like intrigued and interested, okay? So that they can be more interactive. And to activate high order thinking, because my belief is that when we teach students language, it's not just about the vocabulary and the grammar, okay? It's also about the mindset, about like their characteristic, their personality. So maybe a little bit of creativity, critical thinking, and problem solving goes a long way. Okay, so now it's your turn, okay? I think that you have done enough of the listening. Now it's your turn to speak. And I'm excited about this part, okay? So imagine that you have a class of 15 adult learners. That is like the ideal class size, right? 15 adult learners, and they are at the level of B2 CEFR. Okay, so they are intermediate learner, Maybe there are some learners that is weaker, or maybe some of them even more advanced. Okay. So now I'm going to show you a short extract of an article, and I want you to skim the text very quickly. You will get the idea of it like just in a glance, okay? Don't have to read it in details. And I want you to type your ideas of your perfect post-reading activities in the chat box, okay? Or maybe you can raise your hand to speak. And I'm going to call two teachers to raise your voice and mute, okay? So this is our text. This is actually an authentic text that I get from the Agency of Vietnam General Confederation of Labor, the newspaper, online newspaper. Rushing to register for extra classes, teachers complain about procedures. Okay, so I'm waiting for your responses. Okay. List 5 things or phrases that you've learned from the text. Okay, I already see a response, but I think this one is sent even before I show you the text. So I want you to do something that is more relevant to the text, okay? And I'm waiting for some of you to raise your hand too. Okay, so raise your hand. I want to have some names so that later VietTESOL have to send you gifts to your house. Okay, Miss Quyên. Okay, Miss Quyên, if you can turn on the camera and speak. Yes, I'm waiting for you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, perfect.
So now I have to read the vocabulary, right?
No, not to read, but think of post-reading activities. So when the students have read this article about teachers complain about the procedures to register for extra classes, what kind of post-reading activities are you going to ask them to do? Okay.
So maybe I can ask them some questions about the synonym of the phrase. Yes, some question to answer. For example, the name of the policy. What is it? What is the feeling of the teacher? Yes. Maybe yes, just answer. They use the information from the text answer my question. So yes, for them to understand the main idea or some details of the passage. Yes.
Okay, yes. Thank you, Miss Quyên. Yes. Okay, so I can see that Miss Quyén's idea is actually quite similar to some of you here in the chat box, is that you want to focus on the vocabulary, right? So language focus post-reading activities. Okay, thank you, Miss Quyên. And I have seen in the chat box, we have some ideas about acting out, some ideas about debate for and against the policy. Okay. Tell one problem students have faced recently to register for the extra classes. Okay. And for and against the policy. Okay. Now I want to call one more teacher. Okay. One more teacher. But make sure that your ideas is different from the chat box. Okay. Not the language focus one and not the debate and not the acting out. Okay. So what else do you have? Okay. I want to ask Miss Quyên. Yes, you can turn on your camera too and share.
I'm so sorry. It's not so convenient for me to turn on the camera if it's okay with you. Actually, at first I was thinking about the debate as one of the teachers in the chat box, but we can do a predictions. Like can ask students to write their own idea what's going to happen next after this the procedures. Like can you predict the future what teachers will do, or it's somehow similar to debate, but they will write their own ideas or they will speak out their own idea, and yeah, that's what I think of.
Okay.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you, Miss Quyên. Okay, so predicting, right? Predicting is another option of mine, is another favorite option of mine. And not with just article like this, but also with fictional stories. So students can predict the ending if they have just only read like the first few parts of the text, and then maybe they can even like write a different endings for the story. Okay, and I can see that there is one more student, there's one more teacher that has been raising his or her hand, and that is Julia. Julia, yes, are you here? Yes. Yes, okay, thank you, Julia.
Yeah, I have a few things I'd like to share. I think one of them could be a one-sentence summary. So that's basically to help students to deliver their speech in, like in a simplified way without having a burden of like remembering every detail. Or that could be deliver a summary as if you were speaking to a 3-year-old child, like the simpler, better, simplify. Or another thing that they could do is to make a summary, but with one mistake, and ask the other students to catch the mistake. So that's about attention to detail and scanning the text for detail. And it also activates everyone else in the classroom because then they have to listen to the peers and like actually, because not everyone likes listening to the others. Yeah. Or another like similar one could be like reorder the key events and summarize them in like in a synchronous order, not in a way that they were narrated in the story. Yes, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Julia. Okay, so yes, summarizing is also another way for us to deliver like a post-reading activities. I like Julia's idea because it is not just summary, right? It is summary with a twist. It's that twist that make the students more engaged. For example, it's like explain to me as if I'm 5, right? Tell the story, tell the article, but as if I'm 5. Like imagine you have a child and the child is 5 years old and now the teachers cannot teach the child extra classes. So how are you going to explain to them, right? And then maybe like summarize but with a mistake so that other can spot it. Okay. And I can see that also we have a lot of ideas here. Discussion, yes. Write a letter of complaint to the Minister of Education. That's great. Yes. Okay, discussion. If you were the government, how would you address the concern of the teachers? Yes. Okay, so I can say that one thing I like about this workshop is that I have total trust in you guys. You turn off the camera, but when we ask you to be interactive, you guys raise your hand, you guys type in the chat box. Okay, so the first activities that many people would think of, that is discussion. But not just any discussion. The keyword is personalization and localization. Ask yourself, how is it reading related to your students personally? And how is it reading related to maybe their community, right? Their teachers, their parents, their kids, maybe because they're adults, maybe their neighborhood, maybe their schools, maybe the school that their kids are going to. Okay, so personalization and localization. Okay, the second one is a production task, and that is speaking. And I can see that this one is the idea that most of the students have given in the chat box, that is for and against the policy, right? Okay, so I'm not going to focus on this one. Okay, so one more is the language focus. So I can see that when you think of post-reading activities, many of you say that you want to focus on the vocabulary, right? Maybe ask how are we going to paraphrase this text and things like that. But actually, the reading task, the reading text is also a very good sample for you to analyze the use of grammar. For example, in the text just now, we can ask the student to scan the text, underline a target language that you choose, something that you know your students know about, but maybe haven't been able to practice it much in their production skill. And we can lead on with the controlled practice, maybe paraphrasing activity, rewrite sentences using despite, and then we can have like freer practice, right? Ask them to write their own sentences related to teaching using despite. Okay. Another production task. This one I've seen that haven't been mentioned in the chat box, so I'm going to focus on this one a bit more. And that is also speaking, but it is to conduct an interview. So one participant is the reporter, maybe the one who write the article, right? And the other one is the teacher who are struggling with the registration. And the reporter is going to write at least 3 or 4 interview questions, and the teachers need to respond. And then they can switch the roles. So the tip here is to add requirements that students must use target vocabulary and grammar. So usually when we teach a reading lesson, it's not like stand-alone lesson, right? It's always be preceded with maybe another lesson. Maybe they have learned a target vocabulary or grammar skill. So for example, just now I focus on the grammar point despite, right? So I will ask that when the reporter write their questions and when the teacher responds it, they have to use despite. They have to use the target vocabulary and grammar. Okay, so this is to avoid the fact that students are going to write their questions or maybe answers using the familiar words, familiar phrases that they feel comfortable to. Okay, so this is to challenge them a little bit. Okay, and another one is also production task. It is writing. So now we can put ourselves in the shoes of another role. That is not the teachers anymore, not the minister anymore, not ministry anymore, but it is the parents' perspective. So maybe we can ask them to maybe write a news story or maybe a Facebook post. Maybe you are the parent who support the new law and believe that extra classes should be strictly regulated. Maybe some of you will be the parents who struggle to find extra classes for their child due to teachers' difficulties in registration. Okay, so after they have written their news, they can share with others in the class and then they can discuss. So this is also for them to integrate all of the other skills, right? They will listen to their partner's conversation, and they will also be speaking when they read out loud and when they discuss the ideas in their story. Okay, so I am aware that when we put this into practice, there will be some questions, there will be some concerns. So I'm waiting for all of your questions in the chat box, okay? I will address them later. Okay, so this is my cheat sheet, okay? This is my cheat sheet. So whenever I design a post-reading activities, I would look at this cheat sheet and ask myself, what do I want to focus on today? Do I want to promote their critical thinking? Do I want to encourage to speak more or write more? Do I want to focus on a vocabulary or a grammar point that I have learned earlier? Or do I feel like the class is a bit dull these days and I want them to be stirred? I want them to be more interactive? Or maybe I want to add a real world element. Okay, so this is a cheat sheet for me. So ask yourself, which aspect of the post-reading activities do you want to focus on? And pick and choose from the recommended activities, okay? So I'm not going to read the whole slide, but maybe this one, you can take a screenshot, or maybe you can just read the slide later. Okay, so this is the post-reading activities. Okay, so far so good, guys. We have gone through like the procedure of the pre, while, and post. Okay, so far so good.
We're still good. Don't
It's
worry.
still good. Okay. Because I just want to make sure it's Sunday night and tomorrow you have a long day ahead. Okay, so a quick check. 1, so far so good. 2, I think I'm gonna quit soon. Okay, so 1, so far so good. 2, a bit overwhelmed. Okay, a lot of 1. Okay. Okay, so I can see that there are still a lot of people here with me, so I'm going to continue, okay? Okay, I'm going to continue yapping to my favorite part, and that is developing reading materials, okay? Developing reading materials. Because most of the time maybe we don't want to just use what the textbook have already given us, right? We want to make something our own. Okay, so the strategies that we are going to cover today in the developing reading materials, that is how to choose reading materials. Yes, how to choose the right one, how to choose the interesting one. Secondly, how to adapt your reading materials to fit your students, right? Maybe you really like the topic of this reading text, but it may be too difficult, it may be too easy. Okay. And lastly, how to incorporate visible thinking routines. Okay. I can see that some teachers say here, I have been waiting for this part. Okay. So who will not find this part useful? Choose one. Okay. Who will not find this part useful? Freelance teachers, teachers in schools with a strict textbook, university, college lecturers, content creators, curriculum designers. Okay. Okay, so some of you may say that homeschooling parents may not need this. Some of you may say that teachers with book that are already assigned, okay, may not need this. Okay, I can see that Miss Lai Huang may think that this is a trick question and say that none. Okay. Okay, so actually, yes, like some of you have text in the chat box, all of them will find this part useful. So the freelancer, quite obvious, right? But some of you, most of you here will say number 2, the teachers in schools or centers with strict and pre-assigned textbook could still benefit from strategies on how to develop their reading materials, because they will still need extra materials for homework, maybe extra activities. Maybe they still need to adapt the pre-assigned books for mixed ability classes. And visible thinking teams, I have to say it is very essential and it's very interesting to hook the students and to develop their thinking, not just their language, but also thinking as well. Okay, so all of them can take advantage. Okay, so first, when we choose the right materials, we are going to consider 3 key factors. Students' age. So are they young learners? Are they teens? Are they adults, right? For students level, are they beginners, A1, A2? Are they intermediate students? Are they advanced students? And then students' needs and interest. What are they learning English for? Are they learning English to pass a test? Are they learning in order to communicate? Are they learning because they need to work in certain jobs or occupations, right? Okay, so I'm going to share with you some of my favorite textbooks that I have been using throughout the years, and I'm going to share with you the tips for choosing the right materials. So what I usually do is that I will choose a fixed textbook for my course, okay, for the whole course. And then if needed, I will check other sources. I will check other sources of textbook and see if they coincide with the unit, right, and the level. So I will stick to the textbook most of the time because it saves me a lot of time. I don't have to design other tasks. I don't have to think of much extra materials to go with it. So for the primary school students, for example, I will choose Our World. And the most important thing is how can you choose the correct level, right? How to choose the correct level of the books, because you can see in one series there are a lot of books. So in a series level guide, if the book is part of a series, there may be a chart inside the book or online that categorizes all titles by level, right? So this one is very straightforward. This one is one that I use for my adult learners, for business English, market leaders. So this you can search very easily on Google, like the name of the book with CEFR level, and you will see a chart, okay? It's very easy to find. Okay, but there are also some books that are not very easy to find the level of the book. And that's when you have to go and find the publisher's website. So for example, when you search the name of the book and you go to the website of the publishers, here we are looking at the Oxford Discovery, right? So the Oxford Discover book, you will see that they note the language level there. Is that for A1 or A2? Here, for example, I'm teaching level 4 and it is for B1. Okay, so for example, if I want to have like extra material for students of level B1, maybe I will go back here, right? And see. Okay, so I will chouse our World 6, even when my students are learning Oxford Discover 4. Okay, so I will align them using CEFR level. Okay, so publisher's website is a very useful sources of information. Okay, let's move on. This one is perfect for secondary school and high school students. It is a series that I have been using with my students as well. It is the Impact Books. So this is also something that you can see on the publisher's website. Low intermediate students, B1 level for Impact 2. Okay, and some of the time you can find the CEFR level on the cover of the book. So maybe it is the front cover of the book, like the Skillful series. Or maybe like this one, Complete IELTS, right? It's noted there, like band 4 to 5, 5 to 6.5, and 6.5 to above. And some of the time, the CEFR level is noted on the back cover of the book, like in this live series of Nat Geo. Okay, so it's very small, you have to pay attention. So here, for example, live, it's A1 for live beginner, okay? So pay attention, we have 3 sources. First, search Google the name of the book with CEFR level and see if there is any charts for the whole series. If you cannot find it, look up at the publisher's website. And lastly, see the cover of the book, okay? The front cover or the back cover, or maybe sometimes it's like a few page in, okay? So keep an eye on the CEFR level of the book. Okay, and actually books are not all of the reading materials that we can use. You can think a bit out of the box. You can think of the context where students also have to read, right? They don't just read when they open a book. They read all of the time. They read when they want to maybe watch a movie with subtitles, maybe comics and graphic novels. Maybe they go on social media and they see an ads, or maybe they follow the page of their favorite musicians or something. Okay, so instructions, manuals, interviews, conversations, or maybe like posting the picture right now, a menu, right? So think out of the box and maybe don't just choose textbook. Okay, thank you. Thank you for all of the yeah, compliments in the comment in the chat box. Okay, so now that you have chosen like the material that you like, right? But now how to adapt it so that it best fits student, because maybe sometimes it's not like perfectly aligned with your students. Maybe you really like to use this one, but it's difficult or a bit too easy. So there are 3 ways that you can differentiate for your mixed ability classes. It is to change the grammar aspect. Maybe you want to change the vocabulary, replace the vocabulary, or maybe you want to change the task, okay? So keep the text, but change the task. So for the grammar, for weaker students, they need shortened sentences, okay? Shorter sentences, not too many clauses in one sentence. Simplify the structures, okay? If you know that your students haven't been able to understand passive voice or conditional sentence, don't use it in your text, okay? And for more advanced students, keep complex structures and maybe ask them to analyze the grammar structure. For the vocabulary, the weaker students, maybe when they see a difficult word, they freak out, right? So maybe we replace that difficult words, but we replace them with common synonyms. Or maybe we provide some kind of visual aids. They don't know what is a telescope. So picture of a telescope there, for example. And for the more advanced students, you can keep the complex vocabulary. Oh, sorry for the spelling there. Keep the complex vocabulary, but add a context clues. Okay, so add something like a relative clause that give the definition, maybe give a synonyms, an antonyms, or maybe some kind of example, right? Okay, and for the task, so the keyword here is, do you want them to perform the low order thinking skills or the high order thinking skills? For the low order thinking skills, they are recalling, understanding. And for the high order thinking skills, like Julia mentioned just now, summarizing, analyzing, justifying opinions. So answer questions like why and how, right? Or create something new themselves. And even for traditional tasks, in the well reading activities, we have easier tasks with clues or hints, like multiple choice questions, right? Even if they don't understand like the whole text, but they can base on the options like A, B, or C, and they choose like the one that make the most sense, for example. Or maybe sentence completion. They can use the context from the rest of the sentence, and they can complete the sentence. And for the more advanced students, ask them more open-ended question and ask them to clarify their answers, have more freedom to express themselves. Okay, so that's how you are going to address differentiation for mixed ability classes and to adapt your materials. Okay, last one. Okay, one last part of the developing your own materials. I promise you, this is going to be the last part and it's going to be an exciting task, okay? So there are 3 visible thinking routines that I use a lot when I develop the materials. The first one is the KWL. So when you see here, you already know what it is, right? What I know, what I wonder, and what I learned. So in the pre-reading activities, you should ask your students to complete the first 2 columns. What I know about the topic, right? And what do I wonder about the topic? What questions do I have about this topic? And when they have finished all of the reading, all of the task, they can finish the last column, and that is what I learned. Okay, so for example, robin, the topic robins. What I already know about them, they lay blue eggs, live in my yard, sing songs. Quite simple, right? But I want to know a lot about them. Why are their eggs blue? Where do they go in the winter? How do they make a nest? And then what I learned about robins after the reading text, the materials of nest, and the number of eggs that they lay each time. So that is the first visible thinking routines. Know, wonder, and learn. Okay. The second visible thinking routines, that is see, think, wonder. Okay. So what are you going to do is that you are going to show them a prompt. And like Miss Phương say, a prompt like a text, a video, a meme, a song, an image, okay? Whatever you want. And this is, I think, is perfect for students' pre-reading activities. What do I see? What do I think? And what do I wonder? Okay. But the key here, I think, is to choose the kind of prompt. Choose the right kind of prompt. Because if you choosing the picture on the left, most of the time, students will have the same answer, right? I see a mouse. It is eating. Maybe the question is that, what is it eating? Is it good? Is it delicious? And most of the time, the conversation is not going to be very interesting. But if you choose the prompt on the right side, and that is one of my favorite prompt, that is to choose award-winning photos, okay? Photos that winning some kind of awards. So they are very thought-provoking, they are very interesting, and they encourage divergent thinking. Students will have different questions about this photo. Where are they, right? Where are the mice? What are they fighting about? Or are they actually fighting, or are they dancing? Okay, so make sure that you choose your prompt carefully so that you encourage the discussions in the class. Okay, and the last thinking routine, okay? The last visible routine, that is the 3, 2, 1 bridge. The 3, 2, 1 bridge. So this thing students are going to answer before and after the lessons. They are going to write down 3 thoughts or 3 ideas that they have about the topic. they write down 2 questions that they have about the topic, and they write down 1 analogy that they have about the topic. So analogy here can be some kind of metaphor, can be some kind of comparison, okay? And then after the lessons, they do that thing again. And then they are going to connect the ideas and they are going to compare. Identify how your new response connects to or shifted from your initial response. So for example, you can see an example here. Okay, so first thing, when they learn about natural resources, initial response, they can think of 3 words: soil, trees, waters. After that, they have learned more words to describe the natural resources of California. The questions are more deepened, and also they have the share. In the beginning, we were trying to figure it out what natural resources were, and now we are thinking about how we can use natural resources effectively to make the world a better place. Okay, so this is how you can see like the shift in students' thinking, like the improvement in students' thinking. Okay, so that is actually the end of our workshop here. After talking about the pre-while post activities and the developing your own materials, I can see that Miss Bing is very happy that the workshop is ending. Okay, so okay, yes, that was a lot of information. Please remember to drink water. Yes, I have my cup here. I have my water here. Don't worry, don't be worried for me. Yes, Miss Wong also have a bottle of water. It's already 3:40 and it's actually 10 minutes past our time limit. So now it's time for some Q&A session. Okay, so Miss Wong, can you help me with this?
Okay, I immediately see a hand, right? Miss Wang.
Yeah, teacher, I have some questions for you guys. Can I?
Yes, sure. Please go ahead.
Sure, I have 2 questions for Miss Teacher Cẩm Nhung. The first question is I want to know that with some or like economic vocabs. So how should I deliver them to students that they remember them well for a long time, such as for the IELTS test? Yeah, can you?
Okay, so your question is about how can make students like
remember the hard and academic rules in especially in IELTS for a long time.
remember
Sure.
the vocabulary in IELTS, right? Okay,
Sure.
so I think that my keyword is repetition. And it's not just repetition, but it is interval repetition. Okay, interval repetition. So there is a lot of things that you can do to incorporate repetition of vocabulary. First one, like I have said in the chat box, I use Quizlet. Before the lesson, I use Quizlet. I give them a list of words with the meaning in Vietnamese, for example, and then they have to study the list of vocabulary in advance. Before the reading, they are going to play a game using Quizlet Live. And when they read the text, I'm going to ask them to highlight the words that they've seen. And in the post-reading activities, when we want to like boost their output, right? Their speaking and their writing, I'm going to add the requirements of vocabulary in their speaking and their writing. So answer the question, but make sure that you have to use at least 5 or 10 words, for example, that you have learned. Okay. And that is repetition, but that is in just one lesson. But interval repetition is very important. So maybe 1 week from after that lesson, you repeat the thing again, or maybe you, because you know the vocabulary that they have to learn, right? You try to maybe change your output. Like when you speak, you try to use that word more, okay? And maybe in other lessons as well, you try to use that word in your input or maybe in output. Okay, so repetition and interval repetition. Okay.
Thank you for your useful answer. So if can I have one more question?
Yep. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
sure. In the last part, you said you referred to the complete IELTS book, right?
Yes.
So now I'm teaching IELTS and I use mindset. So can you tell me which one is the better one for teaching students in IELTS?
Okay, I don't think that is like a question of which one is better. It's about preference. I myself use mindset as well. I use the mindset for IELTS book as the main course book, and then I actually use extracts from the complete IELTS for extra practice. So I think it's both good as long as it fits your student's need and your student's level. It is good. Okay.
Thank you so much. Yeah,
Yes.
thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Wang, for your question.
Any other teachers with a question, you can raise your hand. Otherwise, I would want to address some of the question that we had from the beginning of the lesson. Okay, so while we are waiting for more questions, let's go back to the Padlet from the beginning of the lesson. And something that I see repeatedly from the owner of the question and comments from you guys is the boringness of the lesson, especially for reading, right? Reading can be boring. So how to deal with this, how to make the lesson less boring? You can type in your suggestion or you can raise your hand to share your experience. So for me, the most important thing is to realize that sometimes first you need to come to terms, you need to accept that it can be boring. Okay, Miss Cha, please.
Okay, so I'm sorry I can't open my video camera. So I do think that with the boring text of reading, it can be from the irrelevant topics to the student. So I think that with the strategies that the presenters tell us today, we can help students to get engaged in the lesson, like with the picture, with the visual aids, or with the question to get students engaged in the topic. For example, the legal activities we have in the previous at the beginning of the presentation, we can see that the presenter engage her student into the activities with very famous cases. So I do think that the way we help students to get involved in the text will help them to get more active in the text. In addition, with the scaffolding activities that the presenter tells us today, I do think that we can help students step by step to get into the text rather than throw the text to them and then get done, but without any help. So I think that scaffolding activity will be helpful for students to improve their reading skill as well as to be engaged in the reading text.
Thank you so much. That's a wonderful answer. Scaffolding is really important, especially a lot of teachers are complaining about how the texts are very difficult to their students. So you need to somehow make it more accessible to the students. Right. So I totally agree with that. And I was saying, like, I think it's important for us as teachers to, at one point, finally come to terms with like these reading lessons. They are gonna be boring, they are gonna be challenging. And then, like, once we are mentally prepared for that challenge, we can try our best to find the joy in this challenge, right? So look at this as a challenge. How can we make this boring thing more fun? And again, that's Miss Cha just said. So the way we carry ourselves as the kind of leader in the classroom is very important to engage and stir the atmosphere with the student. So if you notice in my lesson, sometimes there are these kind of quirks thing like the trick question or maybe some jokes with the 3 times the vocabulary in teaching reading. And then I am saying like the enough of the quantitative changes will lead to qualitative changes. All these things, they are used to call for more attention, call for more of the engagement from the students. So try to be really close to your students and make sure you understand their needs, their interests, what they like, what is trending at the moment on their feeds, right? And so you can throw in some of them into your conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, and Miss Nhung too.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with Miss Phương on that. I think one tip for the teachers is that don't afraid to show your personality. Like if you are quirky, show it. If you are very serious, and if you are very formal, maybe like tone it down, but still show it, right? And maybe sometimes admit that you make mistake and admit that you are worried about something as well. For example, at the start of the workshop, I was very worried. So when Miss Bing asked me to do the emotional check in the chat box, I admit that I was anxious, but I'm very excited for the workshop. So I think that don't be afraid to show your personality and your emotions before your students as well. Okay.
Yes, and the students won't relate to that, and they won't find more reason to be present in the classroom. So, for example, you can, as Miss Nhung said, you can admit that yes, this is boring. It can be dry. It may be irrelevant to you. For example, if you teach IELTS, you will see that there are many difficult texts that you probably would never come across in your life. But then look at it as a challenge to encourage your student and also to just not to be too positive about it if you don't really feel positive about it. But look at it as a challenge. We know that it's gonna be difficult, but it won't be rewarding once we get to, get to the peak of the mountain and we get to the other side of the mountain. When we look back, it won't be very rewarding. So understand that the students have their own difficulties too. And go with them. Like, don't just tell them like, this is very easy. Why don't you just spend more time working on it? Understand that it won't be difficult for the student too, and try to empathize with them. Okay. Any other question?
Thank
Okay.
you, Miss Nhung and Miss Phương. And I believe that it's quite late, but we still have 125 teachers here. So this is the big success for the online meeting sharing for us. And I would like to say thank you, the facilitators, for very concise, useful, and practical activities that you can suggest for teachers to make the reading more interactive and interesting. And I believe that the teachers here also feel the same way, right? And if you feel the same way, you can leave some comments or some feedback at the Padlet that Miss Nhung have the QR code on the screen or the link there. And you also can send a big heart for them through the Zoom and to say thank you for them or the big hand for them. All right. Thank you, everyone. I believe that this is very useful sharing section, and you will have the recording to watch it again on YouTube channel of VietTESOL, and I will send you the link of VietTESOL YouTube channel. And on behalf of VietTESOL organizer, I would like to invite Miss Trâm. Miss Trâm, are you still here? Miss Trâm will have some word to speak with everyone. Miss Trâm ơi. Miss Trâm, are you here? All right. Maybe Miss Trâm have some internet problem. So Miss Trâm is not here. So on behalf of VietTESOL, I just want to say thank you, teachers. Thank you, facilitator, for spending your time. And yeah, I hope that we are the community of practice and we can keep continue. Whether this project can come to an end, but we can still open another channel like a Zalo channel. After today, I will open the chat on Zalo chat. And if you find it as not convenient for you, you can mute the Zalo. But if you want to exchange more ideas and comments or questions, you can still chat in the Zalo group. And I hope that in the future, we will have many meaningful activities for teachers. And I also want to see your participation. All right. And again, one more time, you can leave your comments on feedback on the link. And we also have VietTESOL also have a link that what to say for you. And after you finish this link, you will have the certificate. Wow. I only share this on this online meeting only. So for people who are joining this online meeting, you will receive the certificate for finishing the survey that from VietTESOL and Business Council. All right. So I will send the link for survey on the Zalo chat. So on the Zoom chat. And I would like you to spend a little bit of time, I think 10 minutes, to fill in the survey and receive the certificate from VietTESOL and British Council. All right. And Miss Young, you can share the screen to see the feedback from other teachers. And I believe that we can spend a little bit of time to share the moment with each other. You can also use Vietnamese if you feel more comfortable. All right. Yeah, and slide I will send on the Zalo word. Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys. This actually means a lot to us. Yes.
Okay, and I think as one last gift for all the teachers that are staying until this moment, I really want to talk about one question we have on Padlet. Miss Nhung, you can find the one from Mary, the one with a lot of problems from Padlet.
The Padlet before, right?
Yeah, the Padlet at the beginning of the lesson.
I have to find it again. Okay. Wait.
Okay. I can read it aloud for you. So while you're doing your feedback form, if you have finished with the feedback form, think about this one. So we asked for the problems, your problem from the classroom, and this one answer really caught my eyes. Mary, right? That was right. So students limited vocabulary, low reading motivation, divert reading levels, poor background knowledge, difficulty. I'm sorry, I cannot read it down right because we have a lot of issues here, and I think that like a lot of us can share the same feeling. Like sometimes we are frustrated with a difficult classroom. So what do we do now with so many problems all at the same time? Yes, I feel her too, right?
Like you are not alone. Don't worry.
Yes. So for me, sometimes for like we teacher, we feel like we need to perfect everything. Sometimes we are the perfectionists. But I think this case is an important example to show it that sometimes we need to be more focused with our goal, and with such a difficult class, maybe focus on one thing at a time. So for these students who probably are in everything and probably way behind compared to the curriculum, maybe pick one most important thing for them to focus on. Okay. And also understand that as teachers, we can only build on what's already there for the student. We can try to inspire them. We can give them different activities. But if they don't, like they have nothing to build on in the first place, then it won't be very difficult for us. So maybe for such a difficult class, we just focus on one thing, and my recommendation would be vocabulary. Make sure that they have really good vocabulary. And for vocabulary, make sure that they can do these three things. So first of all, they can understand the meaning in Vietnamese. Secondly, they can write the word in correct spelling. And thirdly, they can say the word with relatively correct pronunciation. We don't need perfect pronunciation, but at least the other person needs to be able to tell what the word is. So with all the vocabulary and with what they can do with the vocabulary, gradually, therefore, skill, reading, listening, writing, and speaking, they will improve gradually. Maybe the grammar will lag behind a little bit, but at least they can understand some of the text, and then they can do with what they understand, right? So we cannot expect these students will be amazing students like A student with English, but hopefully after a semester or after one course with it, they improve a lot compared to themselves at the beginning of the course. And that is a huge achievement already. And the reason why I choose vocabulary is that for the thing that students don't understand and they cannot write and speak correctly, they won't be afraid of that. Many students are afraid of saying the word wrong and get corrected by the teachers. So that's very important why they need to be able to write and also to say the word relatively correctly. So they have some confidence in themselves, and that would be the foundation. So maybe we cannot help them to be a great English speaker, but maybe once they have a great foundation, they can do other job with that English, or maybe they can go on to more advanced classes where other teachers can help with them. Okay, but I do really feel you. We have very difficult classes, and no matter how much experience we have, we will always have different students.
Okay, I can see that we have quite a lot of feedback here, but that's not enough. Okay, we have like nearly 200 participants and like 100 participants until now. So I need more for us to send you the free slides. I need more feedback. And don't just say that you have learned a lot of things and it is useful. Okay, I have give you the prompts here. 3 key takeaways from the lesson. 2 questions that you still have, okay? Or maybe 2 things that you want to ask like from us. And lastly is 1 emotion, okay? So you have just sent like the 1 emotion that is great and is useful. But I want to see the key takeaways and also the questions, okay?
This is also
Because
the activity that you can use for your reading classes. Ask more students with a specific requirement and ask them to finish them, not just the feedback or what do you feel about that? All right. So I think that when we are a teacher, we also need to do things before we help the student do things like that, right? So teachers, try.
okay, thank you guys. This means a lot to us.
Teacher, I'm not tired now. I'm still not tired.
What do you want to talk about, Miss Wang?
I want to support you guys.
Oh, okay. I don't have class tomorrow. We can stay here if you want to.
Thank you so much. What really means for us is like your support, and hopefully we like you found something from here to help with your classes, and also we found a lot of interesting ideas from the chat box as well. So thank you so much for all the support.
And don't forget to fill in the link to get the certificate from VietTESOL and British Council. I think that it can be like recognition for yourself to be proud of, that you are attentive in the workshop and you are a part of our community. All right. So thank you again, Miss Nhung and Miss Phương, for such useful and informative sharing. And I will right after now I will upload this video on YouTube, and you can also see it again on YouTube to take note or get more insights from this sharing. I think it's really useful. Thank you, everyone. And do you have any words to say more, Miss Phương and Miss Nhung? Or we can say good night to everyone. All right.
Good night.
Yeah, thank you so much
I
for
hope we can
joining.
have some other workshop to learn from everyone like this. It's going to be very useful for
I
everyone.
also want to work with Miss Phương and Miss Nhung in more online event sharing. And I also want to meet you too. So stay tuned. This project ends, but we will open other project or other activities for teachers. All right. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye and good night.
Thank you
Bye.
so much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, teachers.
Thank you.